I'd want to take this time to thank you for attending the first session within this track. We're up in one of the booths, so if you want to come and talk to us afterwards, please feel free to. We're really approachable, and I think we've still got some Krispy Kreme donuts left if any of you have got any space. So, a bit of background about myself. Started in communication security many years ago. Finished school, didn't know what I wanted to do, but thought the military sounded great, thought comms sounded great, and between the two, it's turned into a great career. I think like a number of us in this room, we didn't realise we were going to go into cybersecurity or information security or communication security, whatever you want to call it. We didn't realise at the time that that was the journey we were going to go on, but we thought it was going to be a great ride, so we thought we'd have a go. So, like, as I say, a number of yourselves, it's been an interesting journey. So for the past sort of 12, 13 years, I've been working in the managed security service provider space, delivering with or working with all sorts of quite interesting organisations, all with their own challenges, all with their own objectives. And I just wanted to bring some of that to you so you can get a bit of a view and try and sort of isolate myself from a vendor perspective, and obviously we'll see some of the technology vendors, and try and be more focused on what you're trying to achieve as potentially as consumers, what you should be looking for in managed services, and the way the market's going, and potentially why. When we look at managed services as a global market, I'll just put some numbers up there. It's truly huge. Okay, that's the reason why organisations like SCC, like ourselves, exist, and any number of other providers out there. It's a truly monumental market. The challenge is exacerbated, or the drive has been created in some small part due to resource. There are not enough people doing what we do in cybersecurity. We could train thousands of people to do cybersecurity, and there would still not be enough. And we know that that training is a challenge. Bringing in the right people is a challenge. Okay, so just to give you a bit of a view of the market, when you look at both the UK as a whole and internationally, it's phenomenally massive. Okay, so that makes your lives much more difficult when you're trying to deliver outcomes. You're trying to help your organisations just get the job done. So I just wanted to sort of focus the mind a little bit as to why companies like myself exist and what we're trying to do. So, some of the trends. I won't read these out, but obviously you are probably going to be familiar with some, if not all of those. You'll be living and breathing that on a day-to-day basis. Oddly enough, I had a conversation with somebody about the journey to cloud, and I made the comment, people aren't on the journey to colo anymore, and I was corrected. So there are still some people out there who are interested in colo, but in broad terms, people are looking at cloud adoption. We're looking at how do we do more, how do we slim down our tool sets, how do we extract every ounce of value from what we've got, but we want to ensure we don't leave any gaps. Security gaps, operational performance gaps. If you're buying an E5 subscription from Microsoft, which a lot of people are doing, how do you extract every ounce of value, both in productivity and cybersecurity perspective, for example? How do you do more with less? The age-old conversation. Okay, we talked about resourcing. People, having the right people in the right places at the right times is a challenge. Automation will help alleviate some of those challenges, but therein we've created a problem for ourselves in that you need clever, motivated people to develop the right automation that's right for you. Because you can't go from zero to hero in automation overnight. You have to understand your environmental concerns, your risks, your challenges. You have to be very gentle in how you apply these things, and you have to be very mindful of the impact of doing it wrong. And I've seen, over the years, again, going back some time, I've seen some interesting outcomes, shall we say, from automation. Artificial intelligence, I'll talk about that in a little while as well. It's one of the latest buzzwords. It's great, but contextually you have to consider the risks or the challenges of doing it or considering it. Zero trust, another great marketing concept. Actually, from a strategic perspective, it makes perfect sense. But that journey is fraught with challenges from a business perspective. How do you deliver consistency to your internal customer, as it were, but also to your consumers as you embrace zero trust? And the reason you're doing that is because you want to be more secure, you want to be more efficient. So again, focusing on the outcomes. I have seen an inordinate number of organizations who struggle to do network segregation. Yeah, segmenting your network, if you have an enterprise, is a nightmare. Okay, the amount of risk you've got for basically screwing it up is huge. So even starting that journey, you have to consider all of the potential challenges. So again, I just wanted to highlight this. These, we know, are the key trends for this year. But I would say, over and above, when we look at the technology, the people that you want around you, the people that you're trying to work with, you're trying to develop, your succession plan, all of those things are going to be underpinned by the people you can bring into your organization. So if we look at the evolution of managed detection and response, we have all the DRs you can imagine. We have EDR, MDR, XDR, NDR, all the detection and responses. Again, when you think about it, the detection piece is common and the response is common. Well, who's going to respond? Typically people. So it's considering those outcomes. So endpoint detection and response, we've all seen and probably worked with countless vendors over the years. I've worked with, there's a number here, I've worked with Carbon Black and with Microsoft, and phenomenally effective tools when applied in the right way. Again, we have to consider people, process, and technology in order to get the outcome, because ultimately what we're trying to do is deliver value. Gartner came up with the concept of managed detection and response in 2016. Brilliant. However, MDR means something different to every vendor out there, because everybody has their own particular objective, their own particular challenge, or indeed USP. So they will play on that in order to say why their MDR is better than somebody else's. Okay, so as a concept, MDR is really sensible. When you think about, and again, I started doing ArcSight years ago, Logarithm. We'd talk to a customer and we'd be talking about managed detection response and the use cases and coming up with detection logic. And the customer would talk to us and say, well, you're the expert, you tell me, what do I need? How do I get the right rules? Because it would be quite fixed, quite static rules that were tuned so that the false positives didn't blow you out of the water. Okay? That was great at that time with the type of threat actors that we were experiencing. We then moved on to, okay, so the threat actors, the attackers are getting cleverer, they're getting more innovative. Ransomware is becoming a thing. How do we evolve? And that's where, luckily, MITRE ATT&CK framework came out. Now, I'm sure many people in this room have heard MITRE ATT&CK before. I may be doing it a disservice, but I like to explain it to those that have never heard of it before. Is you buy a car, you want to look at your Euro NCAP. Am I buying something that's basically safe? Okay, if it's got 5 stars, brilliant. You can still crash it, yeah? But the chances are you are not going to end up in as bad a situation as if it had 1 star, or none, for that matter. So, at an abstract level, MITRE ATT&CK is really good at establishing your broad spectrum of risk, but what you need to do is drill into the detail to understand, okay, so what specific techniques, what am I being able to cover? But again, having something is better than having nothing. So when MITRE ATT&CK came out, and it's evolved a lot over the years, it was brilliant. Because instead of having conversations about 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 use cases, we were talking about coverage. We were talking about risk. And risk is the sort of conversation that I want to have with people. Not is my Sentinel-1 better than my Carbon Black, better than my... I want to talk about risk. Because what we should be doing is saying, how do we make your life better? If you're a CISO, why is today better than yesterday? How can we make next week better than last week? What's your event horizon, your risk profile? Those are the sorts of things we're looking on, which brings us into XDR. So another DR, again, underpinned by people and process. So how do we drive that technology to give us an extended view of the world. Now, the growth of ransomware has driven a lot of the capability in this. There's been a lot of acquisition, there's been a lot of evolution in the market. Working in cybersecurity, information security, whatever you want to call it, every day is a school day. If there is a day that you haven't learned something new that you didn't know before, you aren't reading enough and you aren't aware enough, because it's happening on a regular basis.
Really sorry to interrupt people at the back, it's quite hard to hear with you.
Yeah, sure. Just checking that? Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So, every day is a school day. We come in, we're bright-eyed, we're expectant, we're looking forward to a great positive day. So what we want to do is look at what we can do with XDR and why there's a bit of a buzz about it. But again, don't believe the hype. People and process are the thing that will get you. Okay, the technology is great, but you have to understand the context. So the market, convergence market. So am I being signaled to? Oh, okay, fantastic. So the market is converging. The players are playing. The movers are moving. So, for example, Microsoft. 10 years ago, if I'd have said Microsoft for a security company, people would have literally laughed me out of the room. They make Office, they make operating systems. Nowadays, they are absolutely huge. They are investing billions of dollars year on year in cybersecurity. If they own your data, they own your cloud, they own your operating system, they produce your hardware, why wouldn't they do security? It's just natural. So when you look at them and then you look at some of the other players in the market, you're seeing that there's this movement towards convergent. Driven by doing more with less, driven by the demands for people and process, it sort of kind of makes sense. There are going to be innovators out there, are going to be new innovative technologies, but again, as with all of these things, if they're good, they've established a market presence, they will probably get acquired. And the challenge then is not losing that value. So when we look at the end-to-end visibility with managed services, so again, I'm going to flip a little bit to managed services. So I've just outlined that, people are a problem. We're addressing that problem within SCC. We have our own academy in Birmingham. We're bringing people through as apprentices. We're training people up to be SOC engineers, security engineers, cloud engineers. We know that we have to build the next generation. We're working with a number of our customers on how they can tap into what we're doing, because we're trying to give back to the community. So it's in the media, it's pretty well published that we are trying to do our bit. But if anything, we're trying to be a bit self-serving as well, because we know we need more SOC engineers, we know we need more cyber engineers for ourselves, let alone the wider world. But if we look at the visibility that we get from an end-to-end, we've all seen it, phishing emails. It follows, again, if we look at MITRE ATT&CK and we look at things like this, the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain, it follows a prescribed path, typically. There are any number of ways we can get it right. Okay? That's important to note. An attacker has to do everything right at every step. Granted, there are some organisations I've been to, they just didn't have to screw it up. But if you are trying, or if you have an understanding and appreciation of your business risk, and you have an investment in cybersecurity, you just need to identify them, ideally, as far to the left as possible. So there's a concept of left of the bang, again, another military term. If it's gone bang, yeah, it's too late. But you can recover. SIM technology was originally developed in order to help that, to correlate, to be able to look at what went wrong, find out how you fix the problem so it doesn't happen again. We moved on to MDR, which was, again, trying to stop it as quickly as possible. XDR now, we're talking about, let's go left of the bang. Let's look at the signals, the data that we're seeing across all of these different instances. How do we identify something is going to go bang? And if it's on an endpoint device, how do we kill it before it can be exploited? Okay, sounds easy, devilishly hard to do at scale. Okay, You can apply the right people and process, you can make it work, but you have to focus, eyes on the prize, okay? Managed services, again, I'm biased, I've worked in a number over the past sort of 12, 13 years. Typically, that we're outcome focused, we're looking at your results, we're looking at your service levels, we are going to focus on doing the best we can within the constraints of the service to deliver those outcomes, okay? Going back to that kill chain, you can see there's all sorts of nasties that can go on, there's all sorts of exploitations, and ultimately you end up in a breach scenario. What we want to try and do is, like I say, is get it before it becomes a thing. So what should you consider? How do you find the best managed service provider? Because as far as we're concerned, we're all the best. Again, you have to be objective, you have to consider your market, you have to ask the right questions. You know, if I'm talking to a CISO, they are typically, like I say, don't care about technology, so what? I want outcomes. How do you prove to me that you're doing the work? How do you prove to me you're not asleep at the wheel? Okay? Biggest fear is, well, you haven't told me anything, so does that mean you're not doing anything? Or does that mean that there's nothing to be done? Okay, what is it? So, one of the things I learned very early on in a managed service provider world is don't ever tell a customer it's fine and give them no context. There needs to be an element of context. Again, depending on who you're talking to, if you're talking to a technical manager, they want to know the ins and outs. They want to know, okay, so how many attacks did you stop? What were they? What were they aiming at? Were they, you know, what's the intelligence behind it? How do I change potentially my stance? CISO probably just wants some headline figures as to what we stopped. Doesn't care about the detail, just wants to know that today's a good day. Because as you probably know, that can change in a heartbeat. Just for reference, we had some evidence previously where I've looked at the nature of attacks. 42% of attacks are carried out outside of the working hours of that local environment. So I've done some stuff internationally and it sort of works there or thereabout. So most of the attacks that you will likely see will happen during your normal working hours. However, there is a proportion that will happen outside. And you know, if you are an attacker and you do manage to compromise somebody on a Friday afternoon and it's a bank holiday, you can have a lot of fun and you can do a lot of damage over the course of that weekend if it's not being monitored. And again, I've got some stories I can tell you about afterwards if anyone wants to know. But you can rack up a lot of bills in that time if you're crypto mining. So, work out who is right for you, because not every provider is going to be right for every customer. Ensure you do your patch management. I put it in there because patching is dull. Everyone hates it, no one does it, and if you did your patching efficiently and effectively, you would solve so many problems, okay? I can talk about this because we provide people to do patching. But in all honesty, you know, if you're running, and there'll probably be some eyes rolling here, if you run a vulnerability scan, and then you run another one a week later, and another one a week later, and all you get is more, you're never knocking them off, you're never working out what's important to me, how do I fix the problem, you're never ever going to be in a good place. You know, literally an attacker could come up with you with Log4j and he can just walk through you because you haven't done the stuff that we all know about. It's exploitable, it's been exploited, it's being exploited, and you really haven't done it. You know, you deserve to be shot, quite frankly. But that's the way the world works. And I've come at it from an incident response perspective, and I've seen these things that have gone on. And everyone gets in the news about the really clever stuff and the really clever hacks that go on. But there are some really mundane, common, well-known, well-publicised, well-exploited vulnerabilities and attacks. And you just recycle it. You know, human beings are inherently lazy. Attackers are as well. If they can get away with the easy stuff, they will. So do your patching, please, please. Patching. It will solve you so many problems. Anyway, identify your weak spots. Have an effective baseline. I spoke about AI and machine learning and all these other things. It's all great. Marketing people love it because they can talk about the next big shiny thing. Technologists love it because it's new and it's shiny. But if you haven't baselined your environment and got it to a good state, using data models to look at a dodgy environment isn't really going to help you, because you want to get it into a good state, baseline it as a good state, and then look for changes and abnormalities. So try and do the simple stuff first. Do your patching. Look at all the baselining and try and get yourself into a great place and work from there. Because that way, when you start looking at all the clever stuff that some of the XDR functionality can bring you, it will add genuine benefit to you. Review those. So baseline, look for weaknesses. When we deliver services, I'm a big one for doing purple team engagements, and for those of you that there are any inordinate number of colours, you can have a rainbow of colours. Blue team, defender, red team, attacker, purple team, we all play together within reason. Run a purple team after you've done a deployment of any managed service, because you want to test what you've done. Again, we've got MITRE ATT&CK now giving us a broad view of threats, of risks, of what we should be looking for, what is our coverage. Let's test it. Let's make sure that the SOC and the operations team are seeing what you're doing. Have we proven that it's valuable? Last point, alert fatigue. Doesn't matter if you're doing it yourself, in your own security teams, you're doing it within a SOC environment. Your analysts want to be looking at stuff that's really cool and interesting, that isn't boring them to death. They don't want to be looking at false positives. They don't want to be working through thousands and thousands and thousands of things of irrelevance. They want to be looking at the cool stuff because they're techies and they just like cool stuff. So if you give people something sensible to work into, they will actually dive in and you'll get a really invigorated and interested team. But in order to do that, you have to do the hard work first. So you have to build and establish a good set of policies, governance, detection logic, and you have to work through that learning curve. So I'm sure all of you are aware of NIST. Again, another great framework. What should you be considering at each of those stages? What are the challenges? What are the objectives you've got? How do you look at your maturity? When you embark on a cybersecurity journey, you need to understand, where am I? What's my baseline? Where am I starting from? Where am I going to? What's an acceptable level of risk and mitigation that I need to apply? That's a business decision. That's not a technology decision. The business has to understand, what can we live with, what can we not live with. I've seen big organisations using WhatsApp because they got it wrong, and everything's just turned to dust. So understand what you're going to do, how you manage your risk, and then apply those processes effectively. Validate, review, assess, learn, iterate, move forward. Simple terms, crawl, walk, run. Been saying it for years. Don't think you can drop in fancy all singing, all dancing solutions off the bat. You have to live it, you have to breathe it, and you have to learn. Okay? I've talked to customers that think a firewall is a perfectly acceptable limit to their cybersecurity expenditure. Got a firewall, job done. Okay? If you're working in an environment where your risk profile says, well, that's acceptable, great. But you need to have common sense approach to this. So that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Any questions? Hi there.
So you mentioned EDR, MDR, and XDR. What do you think is next? Like the next iteration? What's going to be the next thing?
I'm sure somebody in marketing will come up with a... So the question was, what's next? We've got EDR, XDR, NDR. What's next? I'd imagine that would be in some marketing playbook somewhere. But by definition, extended detection and response, how far do you extend it? I would hope they stop there because they're running out of letters in the alphabet, and then we'll have to go to 4. But realistically, as I've said, the detection and response piece is a really important factor. It's understanding what are you trying to achieve, getting your people or your service provider on board, and establishing the people and process to do it. So, potentially, we see a huge amount in AI. Interestingly, I did have a slide on this, but I took it out. There was a survey that I saw, in fact, there was a report I saw in the Washington Post about the US military using AI and robots to try and look at these, like, RoboCop type kill machines. Some US Marines did some work on it, and they chopped the branches off trees and carried them up to the machine, and it didn't recognize them. Okay? I've also seen the one, there was something on Twitter about the guys put cardboard boxes on themselves and walked up to it with cardboard boxes on, because the data models it was applying didn't match, therefore it ignored them. They weren't a person, therefore it didn't say they were a threat. So AI is great, but the data, it can be biased, it can be manipulated, it can be subverted. All of these things are risks. And if I was an attacker in the future, I would be thinking, okay, so how can I break AI? Well, you just screw with the data. It's great, isn't it? Hopefully that helped.
How do you go into this thing? I missed it.
So SCC Cyber, so we're a managed service provider. We're delivering MDR and XDR services, SOC-based, UK-based, across public and commercial sector. So this is our view of this. And what I was trying to do is not be technology-driven. Now, we're a big Microsoft house, but we also do a huge amount with Cisco and Fortinet and Checkpoint and Paolo and all the other vendors. So yeah, that's my driver here. So we're upstairs. If you want to have a chat, we can talk it through in a bit more detail, and I can be more specific. But yeah, some interesting stories over the years I've been doing this, of some things that have gone particularly well and some things that have gone particularly badly. Now, we've seen scenarios where attackers have failed to compromise the backups. Otherwise, it would have been really messy. And all the customer's done is just deleted everything and gone to backups. Great, off we go. Where I've seen things that have turned into smoke and ash. So, yeah, all sorts of stories. But hopefully that's been of use to you. And we're upstairs on booth 11 if you want to come and chat to us. Thank you.